All right, so this episode is about when I had a dissected carotid artery and how I healed my brain after that happened. It was quite the ride. A little scary, but that's okay. I made it through, I faced death. And also, just a little announcement that I have some information that I am going to play for you right after this intro before we start the actual podcast itself because they are sponsors of the show and because it has some really good information in it. So do listen for the information. And if you are interested in any of those products, please do look in my show notes for all of the links. And that is a way to support the show. And I would love it if you'd have a look and would love your support. All right, so let's go. I'm very discerning about what companies and initiatives I partner with when it comes to promoting anything to my community. Extremely discerning. And this is why you will rarely see me partnering with anyone by way of promotions unless those things are what I call heavy hitters. Helpful for most everybody and every body, and that support the body's natural processes rather than suppress. And are things my own family uses or does every day for our own health. My mission is to help people to help themselves, to illuminate the possibilities for health and healing. So I must tell you about these three things before we begin this episode. First up, doTERRA essential oils. There are several clean oil companies I love, but doTERRA is my go-to because of their quality, speed and delivery, and my own successful history with their products. I use essential oils every single day in my diffuser. I use them topically on my skin and inhaling straight from the bottle in combinations depending on my needs at the time. You should see my cupboard full of oils. I actually have Calare Sage going right now in my office. And you will find them in my office, my bathroom, my bedroom, and my purse. I have a tiny purse, and the only things that are in it are my wallet and 6 oils. So some quick tips. We use the citruses for uplifting our moods. Our current favorite is Citrus Bliss. We use frankincense for the deeper healing relating to the brain, inflammation, and raising consciousness. I love that oil. I just used it on my ankle when I injured it playing basketball, and I put a little bit on my third eye for raising consciousness at times when I want to do that. Sandalwood and vanilla smell so good to me. Those are some of my favorite smells. And sandalwood speaks to men in particular, or even women who like the smell of it on their men. I love sandalwood and vanilla, but my kids not so much. It might be an acquired scent, I guess. So peppermint for digestion, copaiba and lavender for calm and inflammation. And my favorites right now that I slather on my pulse points several times a day are the heady, gorgeous florals like neroli and rose for trauma and skin, and my beloved jasmine that makes me feel emotionally whole, sensual, beautiful, and grounded. We cohabitate with and rely on plants to not only live, but to live with health. The information that is passed from plant to body can be ingested, absorbed, or inhaled. Essential oils are the distilled essence of these plants, delivering vital and vitalizing information via phytochemistry to the very cells of our eagerly receptive human bodies. So you can go to my doTERRA link in the show notes, mydoterra.com/HFF Essentials, and click either shop or sign up at the top of the page to explore away. And just note that using my link will help us to keep this podcast going, so do use it. Okay, so second up is Microbiome Labs. Another essential synergistic relationship we have with our natural world is with that of the microbes that outnumber us humans by orders of magnitude. In fact, we carry about 3 to 6 pounds of bacteria in our guts. These bacterial life forms are essential to life, as without them, we could not break down or assimilate our food. These bacteria produce vitamins and keep each other in balance. They are essential for our mental, emotional wellness. by way of psychobiotics, or the name is psychobiotics when applied in this way, to our skin health and immune function. Without them, we would die. Literally, we would die. We would cease to exist. We need them to live. With the assaults these bacteria have taken due to the overuse of chemical spraying, overuse of antibiotics, and poor lifestyle habits, many people are struggling with symptoms related to the depletion of these essential bacteria that reside in and on our bodies, leading to the imbalance or dysbiosis of the bacteria that survive. I recommend that people eat organic. Avoid harsh antibacterials, eat a rainbow of whole foods, and eat fermented foods to maintain a healthy microbiome on the skin, in the mouth, in the gut, in the brain, etc. Yet sometimes we need a little boost. This is where Microbiome Lab's spore-based probiotics come in. So hop onto their website for tons of information. They're just like always researching and providing resources for people, and me, myself included, and helpful products that will help you repair and replenish your microbiome. Since Microbiome Labs only sells through practitioners, you'll need to use my link in order to purchase, so check out the show notes for the link. And once on their website, fill out your information, because they will need your information to ship to you, and then just shop away. Read, find out more, whatever you might need, work with your provider if you need some help with selecting. Your microbiome will thank you. And last but not least, a gadget that has brought light, balanced brains, elevated states of emotion, and overall wellness to our lives, my family's life, the Soul Shine Phytovites Light. Did you know that light is an essential nutrient? And did you know that lack of light, or the wrong light, or the right light at the wrong time of day, what Ken Cedar and John Ott call malillumination, can discombobulate the hormonal and neurochemical systems of the body, resulting in symptoms some would diagnose as seasonal affective disorder, sleep problems, ADHD, obesity, learning and focus struggles, depression, and anxiety. The number one way to receive light nutrition is to get out into the sunshine. But if you can't get enough, or can't get outside enough, or if your days are short like winter here in Saskatchewan, or if you need extra light healing, give the Soul Shine Phytovites a go. This light got us through some pretty long winters and days at the computer. Just plug it in and point it towards your face for a few minutes a day. Okay, so it's super bright, like a starship from space at first, but you totally get used to it and learn to crave the effects. Like I'm like, ugh, I just want it. I put it on I actually turn it on over and over and over again. I can't stop. It feels so good. So do check out my interview with Ken Cedar of The Science of Light, dear friend and the best person you could possibly ever encounter, for an in-depth interview about malillumination and illumination, and where you can be inspired by Ken's heart, his wisdom, his dedication to the health of our children. And check out the lights on their website. Ken has given my community a generous $50 off with the promo code HFF, and both links are in the show notes below. And if you want more health-giving information, grab my book, Family Health Revolution: The Definitive Approach to Elevating Your Family's Health, for an encyclopedia of information on how to use lifestyle medicine to overcome dis-ease, illness, discomfort, demedicalize family health, slow down fast-paced modern family life, reduce stress, and return your family to the ease of wellness naturally. All right, so without further ado, the podcast you've been waiting for.
Welcome to the Family Health Revolution podcast with Coach Carla Atherton, where she discovers, uncovers, explores, and reveals the secrets to true family health and wellness.
About 4 or 5 years ago, and I actually can't believe that I don't really remember what year it was, because it was kind of significant. I could probably look back at tests and stuff. I don't know. I know what time of year it was. I just don't know what year it was. But it was about 4 or 5 years ago. I had a spontaneous, and I say that in quotation marks, because when they say spontaneous, really what the category is, or the definition of spontaneous dissected carotid artery, is that we don't know why it happened. And I'll tell you what, I actually think I do know why, but I'm going to get to that. So I had a spontaneous dissected carotid artery. And the dissection is actually even speculative because I had a blood clot that completely occluded, which means blocked, the blood flow to the left side of my brain. Like, for real. I really had that. And the interesting thing is that when I asked the neurologist, like, is this for sure that the blood clot was caused by a tear? And he said, well, you can't really tell, but why else would there be a blood clot? So it was basically like, I don't know, like the clot was there, but we don't really know what started that. And if there was a tear in my carotid artery, then why did that happen? So a bunch of questions never really answered in the medical sense. Okay, so for real, this really happened. That was insane. So I'll tell you the story, and then I'm gonna add a few funny bits, actually, believe it or not. So I woke one morning with this massive headache that felt different than any headache I've ever had. And I have a history of a lot of migraines, right? So in my teenhood, I started to get migraines. I realized that when I had caffeine, that it would trigger migraines, and people often have the opposite effect. But even when I went off of caffeine and, addressed a major trigger and started to look into foods that were high in histamine or, were considered to be migraine triggers, I was going that route at that time. But I was still getting massive migraines that I would have to lay in bed for hours, 5-6 hours. And I even went to the hospital a few times to get some kind of shot of medication. Okay, so that's how it was for me. And this is where I turned to was medications, because I just wanted to stop instead of figure out what happened. So that's another story for another time. But I healed from those, and I rarely get them. I might get a migraine once a year, and I know why I got it. So, just quick, if you have headaches and you're listening to me and you're like, but I don't want to wait for the migraine episode. I'll tell you, B6, I was deficient in my B vitamins, and I wasn't getting enough vitamin D. And I was super low in vitamin D. And I also have a lot of lifestyle things that I've changed. And I didn't drink caffeine, but actually I drink a lot of green tea now, which is very interesting. So listen to that episode when I somehow come to do it. I'm not sure when that's coming, but I will do a migraine episode, especially if people ask me to. Anyway, so I rarely get them anymore. And so these headaches, it was more than a migraine though. And I knew it was, and it was paired with ptosis and meiosis, which is a droopy eyelid and wonky pupils, right? You're looking at me going, and my son said the next day, he said, "You look like a cartoon character, Mom." I was like, thanks. So we use a lot of humor in our home. We laugh about things, even if it's a little bit serious. It's and I was thinking that night, when I was in the hospital, and I was sort of shuffled off into one of the rooms, and nobody was really paying attention to me, because this is sort of the experience that you have when you go into an emergency hospital emergency area of a hospital. And my husband and I were just waiting, and they said, "Oh yeah, well, we're actually no. Okay, just wait. I'm getting ahead of myself, but this was after I had the testing done. Okay, so I'm going to back up. So anyway, we do laugh, okay? But I'm going to get to that point, that part of the story in a second. All right, so meiosis, ptosis, and so looking a little wonky. And so I thought, I probably should go to some kind of emergency care. Because I'm looking in the mirror going, you don't look good at all. So I drove myself in the 45 minutes to the city. And I think everybody was busy. I think all the kids were living at home at that point, I think. Again, I don't remember that. my son might have been in the city by then. But anyway, so I drove myself to the hospital, and it was not the emergency room. I'm like, I'm not going there and wasting my time in the emergency room. I'm going to go somewhere where they really know neurology. And I'd already had an appointment with a functional neurologist, actually a functional ophthalmologist, actually. No, a neurological ophthalmologist. That's what they were. Neurological ophthalmologist. Okay. So the brain and the eyes. And I'd had that appointment because I was already, okay, so this is key. I was already having wonky symptoms that I knew had to do with my brain. And I don't mean I have this malfunctioning brain, I have all this brain damage. I actually prefer when people don't really refer to things like that in that way, because it makes you seem damaged and unwell. And that's not how I see it now in any way. But I was having weird balance stuff. I had to use the rail of the stairs to go up and down because I didn't trust myself to not fall. And so a bunch of vestibular stuff. I had been researching, and I knew a lot about the brain because I worked with kids with pandas. I worked with lots of people, that had like dyslexia or like ADHD or, kiddos with autism. Also knowing this, I was really deep into functional neurology, especially since discovering the work of Datis Karazian, I would say in 2012. I think that book was written in 2012, and I read it all the way to a mastermind that I attended in San Diego. We drove there, my kids and I and my mom, but that's another story for another time as well. But anyway, I was up to the top of my head in functional neurology. I'd actually seen different functional neurologists. I tried to get the training, but they wouldn't let me in because I wasn't a doctor. So I had to take all the other trainings that they would allow me to take. And then I was finally able to access it after years of frustration when they opened it up to a more broader community of interested people. Anyway, so that, long story short, I was already on the brain train, okay, knowing that these things are brain related. And so it's not about, weakness or even a weakness in an arm or the gait of a walk. All that stuff was telling me things about what areas of my brain were affected and what I could do about it. So I was already doing some of that. But then I had this blood clot supposedly caused by a dissected carotid artery. Okay, so I get to this. So what I did was I'd already had an appointment with the functional ophthalmologist. No. Sorry, a neurological ophthalmologist. Okay, I keep messing that up. Anyway, so I had this appointment already, but what they did was they got me in with one of their residents because I was already considered a patient. So I went, and they actually are located in one of the hospitals. So I just bypassed all that mess, and I went straight up there, and they said, okay, well, he said he'd see you, 10 o'clock. Can you get here for that? I'm like, well, it's 8 o'clock, 8:30 now. Yep, I'm just going to get ready and go. I packed my laptop because I had a newsletter to get out that day. And I had peering out of one eye in the waiting room, literally still doing my work. I wouldn't recommend that, but I had to pass the time, and I wasn't going to make a big deal out of it. Okay. So even if it was something serious, I'm not going to freak out and predict the future and get all excited and make the situation worse, because I knew in my heart of hearts that this wasn't just physical. It actually wasn't even physical to begin with. Okay. So I don't know whether to tell you that part of the story now or later. I think I'll tell you that later. All right. So I drove myself to the hospital. I kind of wrangled this, the intern was very nice to me when I talked to him, and I actually spoke to him before I came in. He said, come on in. We did this, some preliminary tests. So it took a long time because they were busy. So I was there pretty much for 12 hours, but I got the correct tests, and I was in the right hands. So there was this cocaine test that I had to take that involved dropping these eye drops into my eye and seeing how my pupils reacted. And when we had to do that the next day because they didn't have the materials on hand. So I had to actually go home, come back the next day. So I drove myself back the next day. I was so I did my newsletter, and I did, some of these tests, and they, did pressure tests, all these kinds of things. And then the next day I had to come back in for this cocaine test. I was like, okay. And then I failed that. I guess I'll just use the word failed. That didn't go well. And it wasn't the result he wanted to see. So he sent me for a CT scan to rule out. And he said, okay, let's rule you out for 2 things that could kill you like now, like a brain tumor and a dissected carotid artery. And he was trying to make me feel better, right? So he's like, we're going to rule out these 2 things that could kill you right now. Okay. And I'm like, okay. So, and I'm thinking, shit, man, like if he has to tell me that I have either one of those things, it's not gonna be that easy for him. So anyway, I drove myself to the hospital after calling I drove myself. Okay. So he tells me this to make me feel better. And naturally, okay, so the first thing I thought when he had to call me with the results, so I went to we did the CT scan, could get me in later in the day, got me in, it was like emergency, right? And I went straight there. I'm like, well, I'm not sitting here in the stupid hospital. So and he said, okay, what's your number? Obviously, he had my number, but I go to my daughter's ringette game that she's already playing. And so there's a bunch of parents that I like to chit chat with. My husband was there because he took her there after work, and we managed to make things work and schedule in my, my exit from the family so I could take care of this. And I showed up there and he's like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. And he's like worried about me. And I'm like, don't make it worse than it is. Like, I'm good. Let's just watch the game. So I get the call from the resident and he's like, he tells me, okay, so where are you? And I said, I'm at the rink. And he said, well, you have a blood clot in your carotid artery, dissected carotid artery that creates this blood clot. You need to get to the hospital right now. I said, okay. And and what I was thinking, the first thing I thought when he had to tell me that was that poor sucker. He's got to tell me this majorly potentially upsetting information or this news that he told me could kill me the day before. And I was like, one of the 2 things that could kill you right now. And this was like, yeah, that blood clot moves, you've got a stroke, right? So I was concerned, but I'm not going to go down the crazy train. Okay. I'm not going to get all stressed out about what ifs. I did think well, what does this mean? Do I need surgery? How high up is this? Or does it resolve itself? Do we have to repair a tear? Because I was thinking what if I need surgery and they got to open up my head? Okay. That was a little freaky. But other than that, I'm like, okay, I got this. It's okay. So I went and said, well, we need to go. And so we arranged things for people to get places. And my husband and I went straight to the hospital. Okay. So we're at the hospital. We get sort of shuffled off. We said, well, we know what the problem is. So what do we do? And so it's just basically antiplatelet therapy. So it's just so I don't, the clot will dissolve. And it would have anyway, because it was already starting to resolve itself in my body. I knew it was. I could feel it. It wasn't as bad. The headache was getting better. I could think. It's not like I, couldn't function, that sounds serious that, it's occluding that artery and preventing oxygenated blood to enter that side of my brain. But I didn't feel like I was getting any worse or, anything like that. I was starting to heal, but we were left in that room. I don't know, it was probably 2 or 3 in the morning before we said, okay, look, aren't I supposed to be starting on something? It was basically aspirin and 1 medication. And I'm not a big medication person, but I do see where emergency medicine can come in and be useful. And so I did that. They finally brought it to me oh, okay. And then I was sent home. And I'm glad to be home. That's where I think I need to be. So we did that. And so where am I? So then we went home. And after that, I just started healing and healing and healing. And now I'm going to back up to what I think actually happened. Okay. And so this is something, okay. So, and then I'm going to actually tell you how I healed that. And, I think I had a big fit actually the day before I had this headache. I actually believe that, and I don't want to lay blame on myself, but I do want to say that I caused my own dissection or the clot itself. Because I was really upset and I literally had like I was yelling, and I had a big fit the day before. I wasn't at my kids or anything like that. Not like, this is not what I was doing, but I got very, very upset. And I think this is what happened. And I thought, well, at first, it's because I have a weakness in that particular part of my body. And when you have a big thing like that happen, and my dad has vascular issues and like scleroderma and things like that. And I thought, well, this is why, because I already have this weak chain in the link in the chain. And this is what we've taught in functional medicine. It's like, okay, well, where's the weakest link? And this is where that happens. But I started to research German new medicine. And years later, right? So I knew it was emotional. It was 100% emotional. That would not have happened to me had I not had this like breaking point. But years later, I started to research that, and I looked at what the conflict shock that might create, a problem in this particular part of the body. You'll have to, I might do a piece about this, or look this up if you want to learn more about that. German new medicine. Or Germanic knowledge. But when I looked that up, the correlation with what like condition correlates with what conflict shock. So the carotid arteries are related to territorial conflict. That was 100% what I was upset about. 100%. And I didn't recognize it at the time, but this was a healing process. So I was actually, it's not that I created damage. I actually set in motion an adaptive process of healing that conflict. Whoa. Okay. So I've been doing that. I mean, this is what I do. I look retrospectively and say, okay, what is it like? Is this correlated to that? Is this, and yeah, this is one of the instances where I'm like, yeah, okay, this is crazy. This is really, really significant. All right. So now I'm going to get to what I did to heal my brain in the meantime. Before I knew this was part of my healing process, it was an adaptive response of my body to heal. Something that was a conflict shock, or literally a threat to me, right? Like, taking me out of safety and into some kind of conflict, right? That creates a shock. And so the body will respond. And so okay. So how did I heal this? I did the emotional work for sure. And I took a lot of stock of my life. I started to get deeper in my ability to do life, like as far as getting off the crazy train before I get to that point. I did a lot of work on blame and victimhood and being territorial about, and really moving from being territorial to having healthy boundaries. And I said no to a life that wasn't good for myself or people I was in conflict with. I said no to that. I said, that is not good enough for either of us. It's not your fault or my fault. It's not about fault. It's about what do we want next and how do we want to connect. And so that's one thing I did. There's a whole lot of things that I could talk about there that would probably take a book to explain. But another thing I did was I didn't use the medication for long, to the chagrin. And this is not advice for anybody, but to the chagrin of the neurologist that I was sent to, who was really not that patient with my questions. I wanted to see the scans. I wanted to know what was going on. And I feel like we have a right. And if we have the desire to see that, yes, we might not know how to interpret that. I felt, though, at that point, I really had a lot of knowledge where I could interpret it correctly. And I mean, as far as people don't want you to get over excited or fearful of what the results might say. They don't want misinterpretation. And I totally get that. But I was, equipped enough with the information to just take things with a grain of salt, but as well kind of see, oh, okay, this is what's going on there physiologically or physically speaking. So I wanted to know more, not to see what was wrong with me, but to see how I could heal deeply, well, and very well, and know what I was sort of not up against, but what I was looking at, Okay. So I did, instead of the medications, I actually switched over to high dose fish oil because it's extremely nourishing for the brain and it's repairing, and it actually helps to build the cell wall at the cellular level because our cells are, encased and they're built with fat. So I'm not wanting to eat a bunch of French fries and creating very non-porous cells, that don't breathe and don't absorb oxygen well. But I want cells that are, breathe, I guess you could use the word breathe, and be pliable and be a very healthy cell wall. So I did high dose fish oil. It's very common knowledge actually now, especially in the functional medicine space, that the fish oils or the oils are very, very important for brain health. So I did that. I went to a functional, maybe I'll stick with the diet. So what else did I do for diet? I did, lots of greens and lots of, very highly nutritious diet. And I was already on that train anyway to begin with. I'd already been doing all that stuff. And I also did, I made sure I got enough sleep. I rested. I took some time off of working so much, and resting my brain, right? And being able to integrate stuff rather than cramming things in so insistently and in a frenzy. It was a really difficult time though, just so you know, in my life. And even in the immediate living situation that I was in. And it was a real challenge to stay committed to my wellness at the same time as really going through some of the most difficult years of my life. So it's not just about nutrition, but nutrition really helped to give me the building blocks to heal physically and the wherewithal, right? Because a healthy brain leads to healthy, thoughts and emotions and such, biochemistry, and that was all really important to me. So I did turmeric for, to make sure that, if there was any excessive blood clotting, that it would, my body would handle it and would be anti-inflammatory. So I knew that my body was doing its job. I just did a handful of things to help it along by giving it the correct inputs, nutrition, and energy, basically. So I didn't do a whole bunch of stuff that might be actually suppressive. I did things that were supportive. And again, so the sleep and the stress, and still continuing to work on the why, as far as in this whole sense of my life trajectory, my life journey, my soul journey, right? What was this about? What was this telling me to pay attention to? And I also went to a functional neurologist, and I was still trying to learn on my own all of the details and all of the teachings. And literally each course was like hundreds of hours long. If I printed out a couple of them, and the stack of paper was like a phone book and a half. That's how much work there is that's how much there is to know about the brain. But we don't need to know all of that for the basics. So I went to a functional neurologist who actually helped, gave me some exercises to do to actually recalibrate, rebalance, and stimulate certain parts of my brain. So he assessed me and just basically does this arm move like this? And does this shoulder slump this way? And, how does your eye droop? And all these different things. How's your gait? And, I actually went to 2 of them. And I actually went to a few chiropractors too, but they were actually both chiropractors that were functional neurologists. And I managed to find 2 in my city, but the first one I went to, he helped me, and then the second one I went to, she helped me. And so there was lots of good expertise in this process of, I guess I would call it repair, helping my body along into this repair process. So I did things like, a half spin in my chair, once a day, or looking at this specific dot, or, moving my eyes this way and that way. And so there were things like that just stimulated parts of my brain to say, hey, make new connections. Hey, grow in this way. Hey, become more plastic. And hey, wake up. So I got better. I got better and I got better and I got better. And yeah, so that is one of the things that I did that was really useful. So let me think here. I want to wrap this up, but I just want to say that any sort of, I don't know if I'd consider this an injury actually, because I didn't have a car accident. This didn't happen because, of a blunt force trauma or something like that. It was something that was an adaptive response. And sometimes things that look like an injury are actually the healing process. If there's no other, well, especially if there's no other catalyst that's apparent other than the body just doing something seemingly out of nowhere, right? Like, or thinking that it's hereditary. So just keep that in mind. Nourish your brain. Your brain is not where your mind is, right? Or where your soul is, but it is an interpretive organ that helps you to be in the world, to see the world, to interpret the world. And so we need it. We need it. We need it to experience harmony and to experience our lives. And so, when mine wasn't working so great, or the connections weren't happening so well, that was really affecting my life. And it made me stop and say, okay, let's nourish this part of you so that you can move on and, walk up and down the stairs without, feeling out of balance. Or so, you can lead your program so that you don't have all of these feelings of, fear about your future, or so you can remember things, or so, and my recall was really bad at that point, actually. And I still notice when I forget words or names or things, and I'm like, nope, that's not my brain. My brain doesn't have the problem. It's the connection and communication between my brain and my consciousness, right? So, being able to just slow down, actually, it's taught me new ways of being, because it doesn't necessarily mean there's a malfunction. It's just that there's only so much you can do at one time, right? And often people have the most intense, like, people call them brain farts. It's sort of like, I don't like that word. It's just kind of not appealing to me, but people call them brain farts, okay? What is that? Is that really a malfunction of your brain, or it's just kind of slowing down a bit because things are coming too fast, right? It's overwhelmed. So lots of different things I'd love to say about the brain, but I just wanted to tell my story right now just to introduce this this topic about the brain and to give a little bit of insight into what I did to heal and to continue healing and to continue allowing my body to do what it's designed to do, which is continuing to, like I said, to heal, to evolve, to expand. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you on the flip side. And do keep in mind that I have lots of programs, lots of services, one-on-one coaching, that sort of thing. So read the show notes. Be sure to read the show notes after this or below this podcast episode so that we can connect further. All right. Take care. May you and your family and the people you serve be well. This podcast is sponsored by the Healthy Family Formula, which essentially means that we share our information for free. For more support, community, audio coaching, full episodes, bi-monthly live Q&A, discounts on our group coaching programs, and more, become a patron of my work at www.patreon.com/Carla Atherton. For more information about anything related to family health, do pick up my book, Family Health Revolution, and check out our newsletter, blog, individual and group coaching programs, and practitioner training program at Healthy Family Formula and CarlaAthertonInspired.com. Find us on Instagram at Coach Carla Atherton and on Clubhouse at Empowered Family. Please note that Family Health Revolution podcast is not a source for diagnosis or medical treatment, but is the opinion of the host. This podcast is intended to empower people with information so they can make the best health decisions for themselves. It is up to each person to listen to their inner wisdom, consider the information they deem to be accurate and applicable to their individual situation, and consult with their trusted healthcare providers if they so choose when making any decisions regarding their own health or the health of their loved ones. Each person's health is their own responsibility.